There is a lot that we can learn from professional game masters. Sure, not everything always applies, and personal preferences will vary. But when someone is extraordinarily successful at something, we should probably pay attention. So here we go. 7 key lessons from pro GMs. Number 1, empower your players to help drive the game. Check out this clip right here from Critical Role Exandria Unlimited, game mastered by Abria Iyengar.
And you make your way back into the city as a couple raindrops begin to fall. And we move over to Dorian Storm. Where are you?
I'm sitting in sort of a broken down chair that doesn't quite look like it should support me. Leaning back with my back against the outside wall of the townhouse where we spent the evening. And sort of feeling morning sun come in and enjoying a moment of peace and quiet, because the last few days and weeks have been more exciting than anything I've ever experienced. And in this quiet moment, I have my loot out, which is sort of this sunburst blue that matches most of what I'm wearing. And I've got my loot in my hand, and I'm just enjoying this moment of peace, strumming out a new melody I've never played before and humming along with it, feeling this morning very content, very happy. Yeah.
Go ahead and make a performance check for me. See what kind of bard you are.
Ooh. 14.
As you play, you can feel just a little bit of a breeze kicks up. It's pleasant and it's warm. And it flutters the curtains that you're sort of like half-heartedly looking at. And a little flutter happens, and then another one. And it reminds you first of the flutter of the tents at the Everdawn, the party where some of you, most of you, all of you met a rager happening a couple blocks away that started as a party for Civilization's Dawn and promises to hold through until the new year. And you think about how that all started with levity and has landed you here with this strange group of people that's opened up the world to you.
Here, Abria allows a player to introduce their character, but also control what's happening around them at the time. You see, allowing the players to have the wheel from time to time can make them more engaged with the game. Abria does a great job of listening to what Robbie Damon set up, and then follows it up by tying in their contribution to the bigger picture as she puts herself back into the driver's seat as the game master. We're not saying the game master should purely abdicate their role as the game master, of course, just that they should allow players to run parts of the show occasionally. Number 2, focus the player's attention on the important things. Here we have a short clip from Get in the Trunk with Joe O'Brien as the game master.
You don't see anything of danger, you don't see any weapons, but Roger, you do notice something on the bedside table that is unlike the newspapers that are piled around it. There's a newspaper on top, but underneath there seems to be a large book that is almost like a binding, almost, with it filled with papers that look like all kind of crunkly and stuff, like a massive collection of papers. Book isn't really the right term because it looks like they're collected into a binder of some kind.
Like a scrapbook.
Kind of, yeah.
Did you notice how Joe makes sure his players focus on the binder they find among a bunch of newspapers? He kind of pish-poshes away the newspaper so that they don't waste time reading through it, and likely making him improvise the contents. Like, that would suck. What's the entire contents of this newspaper? Instead, he focuses their attention on what is important in the scene. Now, there were probably tons of different things in that room that the players could have explored and investigated, but very few of them were probably actually relevant to the adventure and the game. So, what would be the point of spending game time on them if they didn't matter? Now, if you watched my video on campaign pacing, you'll know that an integral integral part of pacing is cutting through the unimportant stuff and driving right to the next meaningful choice. In this clip, Joe uses a sharp cut, skips the rest of the room, skips the newspapers, and gets right to the binder, the important, meaningful choice in that scene. What's in the binder? Will the characters discover its importance? Is there a hidden clue in that binder that helps them on their adventure? Look, I know that it may be tempting to describe everything in a location in great detail. In fact, pre-written adventures and modules often make this mistake in their read-aloud text. But I'm telling you, don't waste time on the trivial stuff. Zoom in on what really matters. Help the group spend its game time on the interesting bits of the game, not the mundane. By the way, if you haven't watched my video on campaign pacing, I highly recommend it, not just because I made the video, but it does contain some advanced game mastering techniques that can really improve the enjoyability of your game. I'll throw a link to it somewhere down below for you. Number 3, don't be afraid to remind players of important information they would know in-game. In this clip, Troy Lavallee on Glass Cannon Live interrupts the scene to provide the players with an important reminder that is critical to the combat.
It's at this time that I'll remind you that these creatures, because you did some knowledge checks about them, they have ferocity. That means when they go down, they're not really down. It's going to take several more hits to actually kill them.
You see, in a previous game session, the players had made a recall knowledge check against these creatures and learned key details that would help them in the combat. However, Troy knows that most players, even the very best of them, often forget things from time to time, so he does the courtesy of reminding them of something their characters would know. Now, yes, this does touch on sort of a debate over whether the game master should be constantly reminding players of things or if players should take better notes. Wait, better notes? Let's just start with some notes. Actually, I've noticed on many occasions my players do take notes, and I'm very proud of that. It's good. Good players take notes. And of course, there is always the line of thinking that goes something like this. If the player forgot a thing, then their character forgot a thing. However, that's somewhat flawed because players experience snippets of the game every 2 weeks or so with long stretches where they aren't thinking about it, thus maximizing the potential to forget. Whereas characters are experiencing the events non-stop and they're always top of mind. However, I will stay out of that debate today and just let you all discuss it nice and friendly like down in the comments. Have fun and be friendly. By the way, if you're a new Dungeon Master running D&D 5e or Pathfinder 2nd Edition, chances are you're a bit overwhelmed. I mean, there's just so much to do when you're running the game. And that's exactly why my team and I make Lair magazine. You see, every issue of Lair magazine contains pre-made adventures and maps that you can just drag and drop into your game. Not only do our adventures speed up your prep time, but when you run a professionally developed adventure, your players will definitely notice the difference. Furthermore, Lair magazine is now on Foundry VTT, making our adventures and monsters easier than ever before to use for your online games. Click the link down below to learn more about Lair magazine and how it can help you. Number 4. Reward characters for more than just combat encounters. In this scene, Abria Iyengar is running a Misfits and Magics game on Dimension 20 and rewards her players for an unconventional accomplishment.
Following the first little bit of your adventure, I want everyone to take an adversity token as just like a little gift for doing the shopping episode up top.
There it is.
Just committing to it.
So there you go. An adversity token for making it through the shopping scene. I mean, you have to admit that is so very appropriate. I personally count a shopping scene as an adversity to be defeated. And if we roleplayed out an entire shopping scene, I would definitely want to be rewarded. Okay, all joking and poking fun at shopping scenes aside, it is good practice to reward players for things besides just beating the snot out of monsters. And remember, there are a variety of different things you can reward players with. Experience points, hero points, and treasure are usually top of mind. But don't overlook the importance of more subtle, yet equally important rewards, such as information that can help them out down the road. However, be careful not to overdo it. Remember that finding that secret door, avoiding the scythe blade trap in the hallway, and sweet talking their way past the guards can be rewards in and of themselves. And by the way, if you enjoy role-playing shopping scenes in your games and are rather upset at me right now, you know exactly where to leave your rage-fueled comments. What can I say? We all have different things that we like and dislike in our RPGs. I enjoy social interaction and combat. Puzzles and shopping can take a hike. Number 5, let your players describe and revel in their successes. Here we see a classic and traditional moment from Critical Role as Matt invites a guest player, Carrie Payton, to describe how they want to do it.
All right, so how do you want to do this? As it's on the ground, laughing and cackling and writhing.
I drop the reed that's in my hand, and I start to play with the flames that start to light on the edges of my fingers. As I slowly bring them together, there's a musical interlude that starts to play and shoots toward the Manticore, diving down her throat and bursting through the chest of her chest and exploding her heart.
Okay, so I think we're all familiar with this technique of inviting players to describe how their characters finish off enemies, but it doesn't need to stop there. Why not extend this invitation to other amazing moments and heroic deeds in the game? I'm reading through Dungeon Crawl Classics right now, and one of the core features of the warrior class is Mighty Deeds of Arms, which allows the warrior to do amazing feats in combat. And that's really cool because it touches on something integral to the tabletop RPG experience, doing amazing stuff and being the hero. You see, most of us in our ordinary lives feel, well, ordinary. So when we play D&D or Pathfinder or Dungeon Crawl Classics, usually the last thing we want to feel is ordinary. So when your players do accomplish something heroic and amazing, allow them to revel in those successes. Allow them to feel the moment and celebrate. Part of that celebration is allowing them to describe it narratively, but even if your players decline, not everyone feels comfortable doing so after all, still make sure that you allow that moment to shine at the table. By the way, if you're finding this information useful, please give me a thumbs up and share this video with others. One of the best ways you can help other game masters is by sharing helpful content. Number 6. Let your players face the consequences of their actions. Contrasting with the previous point, the tabletop RPG experience isn't always filled with heroic moments and fantastic success. In this clip right here from Dice Camera Action, we see Chris Perkins describe a tragic moment in the game.
Strix. So the werewolves and the bats are fleeing the village. Strahd and his bride have taken to the air on their fiery steed. What would you like to do?
How far in the air are they?
Oh, they get about, I want to say 40 feet up.
And Irina's behind him.
Right. She has her hands around his waist, basically.
If she were to suddenly become real rigid, would she just fall off?
Unknown.
Unknown?
Depends.
All right. I'm going to try one last effort and cast Hold Person on Irina. I'm going to see, because horses are hard to stay on. They're even harder to stay on when they're flying.
So you cast the spell. You can see it take hold of Irina. And then you see her fall from the horse.
40 feet up in the air.
40
And I
feet.
can fly, so I fly to intercept.
No, not your turn, I'm afraid.
Dang it!
So, yes, Irina falls 40 feet, landing behind a building, like one of the
No.
Look,
one of the buildings on the
can
town
be
square. You just hear this horrible sound, this bone
a fall can
crunching,
be fixed.
this bone crunching noise.
Falls
And
can
then
be fixed.
And then you hear the Devil Strahd let out a horrible, horrible scream. And then we're going to call that done.
Okay, holy crap. Can I just say how much I love Chris Perkins right now? Do you see what he just did? He just distinguished himself as one of the most amazing game masters of all time right there. Why? For 2 reasons. First, a player did something incredibly stupid. I'm sorry, but it was stupid. Only in a D&D 5e game will someone think that causing someone else to fall 40 feet off a flying horse is a good idea. Now, I'm sure she's accustomed to death not really being a thing in D&D 5e. Characters can barely die, sure, but Irina is not a character. Instead, she's quite possibly the most important plot-relevant NPC in the entire adventure module. Curse of Strahd. right? And Chris Perkins allowed the correct consequences of that action to play out. He described Irina freezing up and falling 40 feet to her presumed death. Chris allowed a critically important NPC to die because a player chose to do something so incredibly brain-numbing stupid. And that takes guts. Well done, Chris. Very few game masters have los cojones to do something like that, and you just showed off a big old solid pair. And the second thing he did that was amazing, and I applaud, is how he denied the other player's attempt to fly over and snag Irina out of the sky. He stuck to his guns, followed the rules of the game system and turns in combat, and did not cheapen the consequences of the other player's actions. Now, I do want to applaud that other player too, because she didn't argue with the game master about it, because we've all seen that in our games, haven't we? Now, as a result of Chris Perkins allowing actions to have consequences, we end up with an amazingly dramatic and pivotal moment in the game, the death of a major NPC, and a very cool cliffhanger for the next game session. I mean, holy crap. There were so many things about this scene that were perfectly executed by Chris. Well done, good sir. Well done. Number 7, make the story focus on the characters. In this clip from Fantasy High, we see Brennan Lee Mulligan weave a character's backstory into the first big bad of the campaign when they get the killing blow.
You feel the wind as you fall from the top of the gymnasium. The sword of shadows in your hand, Dad's gun at your side. A year ago, your babysitter went missing. This is the person that took her. And this is the person that killed your father. Sword sinks deep into the skull of Calvaxis. Shadow bursts from his eyes as his body is rent asunder. The light from the fire erupting from his mouth illuminates Riz, casting his giant shadow across the entire gymnasium as shadows flicker out and burst from all around him. Kristen is vomited out in the royal
I was
ring
gonna
of
say,
fire.
someone cut me out.
Gorthalax catches you, wham, in his hand. You all right, kiddo? I had a whole plan. I did everything right. The prophecy.
I would like to eat a bit of his flesh, and I look at him in his one good eye, and I say, I don't know how long it's gonna take me, but I'm gonna eat you.
You see your mom leaps from the thing, and she says, kiddo, we're not gonna need to go shopping tonight. Yeah! Let's eat
Eat our enemies? What have we become?
Now, by weaving the character's backstory into the big bad at this pivotal moment, the killing blow, Brennan created emotional resonance and made the scene that much more dramatic for the players. In fact, I didn't mention this, but all of the game masters we've highlighted today do this. They use the PC backstories and backgrounds not just as fuel for side quests, but also as a core part of the campaign story itself, even in pre-written modules. This helps make players much more invested in the campaign than they otherwise might be. However, I do want to give you 3 cautions about this approach. Things you should know before you go hog wild. First, weaving backstories into the campaign takes some work and creativity. Now, for a homebrew campaign, that's perhaps not quite so hard. However, altering pre-made adventure modules for backstory considerations can be more challenging. Second, if you do this, you can create a trap for yourself whereby, since character backstories have been painstakingly woven into the campaign, you will be sorely tempted to give the characters plot armor. That is, you as the game master basically won't allow them to die or otherwise exit the campaign because of how integral the characters have become to the campaign itself. Now, if you're running the sort of game where characters never die anyway, well, then I guess you have nothing to lose. However, I'm a strong advocate against games where death is not on the table for a variety of reasons. In fact, I and others have made entire videos explaining why the possibility of character death improves the role-playing experience, so I won't go into that here. Of course, if you're okay with weaving backstories into the campaign, but also willing to let the characters perish if it comes to that, rock on. Third, strongly weaving backstories into the campaign can break immersion. When there are too many coincidences that align backstories to the events of the campaign, the man behind the curtain becomes much more visible. My suggestion would be to play on backstories more subtly and in ways that make their intersection with the campaign believable. However, that's just what I think. What are some of the things you've seen pro game masters do that improve the game for them and their players? Oh, and if you're a new D&D 5e or Pathfinder 2 game master looking for adventures, maps, and other resources to help you run amazing games for your players, don't forget to check out Lair magazine at the link below. Now, if you'd like to learn how to make your games more fun through the power of pacing, check out this video right here. And until next time, happy game mastering.